Final Events, number 5 of 5. It's been a series which I've really enjoyed preparing for, and I felt frustrated because week by week, the amount of information I have wanted to share, I've had to condense down to such a small bit. I mean, last week I did 3 angels. Even though if many of you have heard of Pastor Stephen Bohr, he has a 25-hour series on the 3 angels. I did it in 40-some minutes. I didn't do his whole series, don't get me wrong. You'd learn a lot more listening to him. But each of these topics are really, really very big. And so what I'm gonna finish the series today, but I really want to encourage you to pull out your Bibles, pull out Spirit of Prophecy, study for yourself, know these things. A day is going to come in the very near future when it's vitally important that you know this stuff for yourself. You're not going to be able to run to everybody else to find it because they may not be able to be found. So I've really appreciated preparing this series, as I mentioned, and I thank you. A number of you have given me feedback, both negative and positive, mostly positive, and I've appreciated that too. But I'm just thankful that God's Spirit is speaking to us. I really sense that God has a good message for us. Before I get into the message today, I just want you to bow your heads once more. We just pray. Jesus, we thank you that you tell us in advance what's going to happen so that we can be ready. We know that we're approaching a time of trouble like the world has never, ever seen before. It's going to be worse than it's ever been on this world's in Earth's history. And yet, you give us hope. I pray that today we will find you, we'll find hope through all of this, and that we'll understand what's going to take place, and that we will be bold to make the decisions we need to make now to be ready then. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. If the deacons can hand out this chart, that would be fantastic. I told you I would give you a chart, so it's coming. It's laminated. I want to give a couple thanks as it's being passed out. A professor I had in university, he actually put this together. His name is Dr. Norman Gully. Most of the content really is from him, the order of events, etc. So that's mostly from him. April has doctored it up and made it, a little more attractive and printable. So thank you to my sweetie. And also thank you to Tammy, the church secretary, because she took the effort to laminate them all. She even had to go and get more laminating sheets and to put them all through, and that takes time to just stick them all through the machine. So I've laminated, just in case you're like me and you have kids at home that might spill something on it, that hopefully it will still last. And we have one per family. So we didn't do necessarily one for each person. There may be a few extras afterward at the back, and if you want to pick up an extra word afterward, you may. But I know some people can't be here this week, so I hope there'll be a few left over for future weeks. So really, one per family. If you and your spouse are sleeping in separate bedrooms and you really need a second one, I don't want to keep you from having one if you really need one, but it's got a lot of information on there. There's got a lot of references on here. So I'm going to cover some of this today. Not every bit of this am I going to cover, but it will give you something you can take home and sit down and look at and analyze. It's on 2 sides. It's double-sided. So the first side is pre-probation. The back side is post-probation closing. So really, what's most important really is pre-probation, because that's when your decision is ultimately made. And then the back half is just what's going to happen as a result of everyone having their decision been made. Has every family received one? Just raise your hand if you need one, you didn't receive one. The deacons can bring you a copy. Okay. And I hope that that's something that you will find helpful. I want to give you a brief review of what we have covered so far. We looked the first week in this series at the enemy within, how we're so caught up as Adventists with the signs out of the church, and yet really it's far more important what's happening within. And we looked at the false prophets, which are people who stand up as preachers, even Seventh Adventist preachers, and they tell you that obedience is not important, that you can follow God without obeying His law. That's really what we looked at, the false prophets. Then we looked at the little horn and that power which is going to come to world authority again in the final days and impose a Sunday law. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. Then we looked at Laodicea, God's description of our church today, and we looked at that wasn't really that positive. And then we looked at last week the cure for Laodicea, which is the 3 angels, which is actually actively sharing. Who are the 3 angels? Who are the 3 angels? Us. Very good. I'm glad some of you got that. That was the main point. So if you got that, that's excellent. And the message of the 3 angels really is to worship God instead of, if you don't worship God, you're going to worship the beast. So we don't want to be worshiping the beast. We want to worship God. So we'll get right into this message today. There's going to be an early time of trouble. And I believe that this early time of trouble is very, very nearly upon us. Some people may believe it's already started. I'm not going to give you a prediction of time, but it's going to happen. It either is beginning or it's going to be happening very shortly. There's going to be calamities. Now, there have been some of these, but not to the extent. I mean, we think 9/11 is bad. We've seen nothing yet. It's going to get far, far, far worse. Scales which are astronomical. It's going to be huge. The calamities are going to be in many sectors. It's going to be financial sector. It's going to be climate sector. It's going to be infrastructure. It's going to be widespread. It's going to be so big that the governments of the world are going to be unsure and how to actually correct it. It's going to be huge. That's going to follow persecutions. I'm going to tell you why it's going to follow with persecutions in just a minute. And those persecutions are going to lead to martyrdom. In fact, there's going to be more martyrs in the last generation of Earth's history than there has ever been in any other generation. And there are some times in history, we look back at the Dark Ages, or you look back at Manasseh when he became king, you can find thousands of martyrs, but nothing like in the last days. There is going to be lots and lots of people martyred for their faith. I'm sure there are some of us here today who are going to be martyred for their faith. You know what? It's not really that big of a deal to be martyred for your faith, is it? What's the next thing you know if you're martyred? Like an instant, and you see the face of your best friend. That's nothing to stress about. It's nothing to worry about. We sometimes worry about it. I remember when I was a child, I used to really worry about being tortured. You know, death wasn't the bad part, but what are they going to do? They're going to Chinese torture me. They're going to stick bamboo under my fingernails. They're going to do all this kind of stuff. You know what? The Bible says that God won't allow you to be tempted beyond what you're able. I'm not going to tell you what pain you will have or not have, but I know that God will not let you go through something which you are unable to go through. And that's why the time of trouble ahead, we are told in the spirit of prophecy that many will be laid to rest. Some of the elderly, some of the younger ones, some of the weaker ones. We don't know exactly who, but some of us will be laid to rest in our sleep before this time comes. And it may be that there seem to be a whole lot of funerals. And it may be that this is God's mercy, saving some people for eternity and not having them to face this and go through this time. The other thing I want to point about martyrdom, and I really don't have any solid evidence for this other than historical evidence. Some of you have heard of John Huss, great reformer in Europe, John Huss. They burned him at the stake, and his story is one like many others. When John Huss was burned at the stake, what was he doing as the fire is burning below him? Here he is. He's tied to a pole with a bonfire below him, and the bonfire is lit, and it's burning, and it's hot, and he is above those flames, and here he is. And what is John Huss doing? Singing. Now imagine putting your hand on the stove, on a hot burner, and then singing a song. Do you think anyone in here, I don't want any volunteers, but do you think anyone could actually really do that? I don't find that humanly possible. So I am convinced from that evidence and many other stories like that with martyrdom, that when you commit everything to Jesus, that God says, you know what, you can take their life, but you know what, they've already made up their mind, they're not going to suffer any pain. They're going to have no pain. The process will kill them, but they will not experience a bit of pain. I believe that is the case. That's my personal conviction. When I'm martyred, or if you're martyred, we'll find out by personal experience. And if not, we'll praise the Lord. We should strive to be one of those that actually lives and doesn't see this. When these early time of trouble comes, Satan is going to put his interpretation upon the events, and they're going to think, as he would have them, that these calamities which fill the land are a result of Sunday breaking. Thinking to appease the wrath of God, these influential men are going to make laws enforcing Sunday observance. It's interesting to hear the rhetoric. I know, like, when Hurricane Katrina came, it was right before Mardi Gras in New Orleans. And there were preachers in America saying, this is an ungodly event, and the hurricane was God's judgment against evil. And I'm hearing this more and more rhetoric from religious circles saying the reason our world is in trouble is because we have abandoned God. We're not following God. And they're going to convince the masses that this is actually the case. The reason this is this way is because God's angry. It's very ironic because the reality is that when we sin, we remove ourselves from God's protection. This is why Laodicea, God wants us to separate from our sins so that he can protect us. As long as we cling to sin, God cannot protect us. This is why he wants to help us to be overcomers with the sin in our lives. So if you take a city like New Orleans, if they really are really wicked, God has to withdraw because the people have said, God, we don't want you. God has been pushed away. So when God's pushed away, then Satan has the ability to do what he wants to do. So is the calamity because God's not there? That's partly true. I want you to understand it. It's partly true. But who brings the calamity? Satan does. This is what Satan loves to do. He loves to create a big mess and then blame God. And this is what he's going to do at the last days. He's going to cause all this havoc and make people believe God's doing it because he's angry. And if you do what I tell you to do, then God will be happy. And all he's using, he's just trying to switch the people to following him instead of following God. There's going to become an international Sunday law. I mentioned this 3 weeks ago, but I want to expand upon it a little bit more here. It's going to be led by the United States of America. It's going to be probably the first country that's going to pass it because it is the second power there, the second beast, the lamb-like beast that speaks like a dragon in Revelation 13, which we've already looked at. And so they're going to pass this law. But when America passes this law in conjunction with the papacy, it's not just going to stay there. All the nations are going to follow. We may have a little bit more time in Australia, hopefully. Maybe a little more time in New Zealand or maybe Japan, or there will be places that will happen a little bit slower. But eventually, the entire world is going to support this call because they say, if we don't all support this, the whole world will be destroyed. We have to band together, and we've got to do this. Pressure will be put there. God's people during this time are going to be praying for delay. Many statements, and I'm not using those. I have a lot of Ellen White quotes I'm going to be using today. I'm probably using more Ellen White today than I've ever used in any sermon before. So if you're new to the church and you don't know anything about Ellen White, a modern day prophet, I'm happy to talk with you at any later time. Okay? But she talks about God's people, some of them just being kind of lackadaisical, or kind of like, oh, yay, the Sunday law is coming. We know it's going to come. That means Jesus will come back sooner. Woohoo! She says we should not be complacent. In fact, we should do everything we can, even going to the polling booths on Sabbath, if necessary, to vote against a Sunday law. Because the longer it delays, why should we be hoping for a delay? If we want Jesus to come back, Seventh-day Adventists, we're praying for Jesus to come back. Why should we want there to be a delay? Why do we want Jesus to come back at a later date? Because if we are a genuine Christian, as I talked about last week, we know there are people around us, people in our community, who have not yet determined which side they're going to be on, and we want them to have more time. We want them to have more time so they too can be saved. So God's true people are going to be doing all they can to oppose these laws because they want there to be more time. The whole world is to be stirred with enmity against Seventh-day Adventists because they will not yield homage to the papacy by honoring Sunday, the institution of the anti-Christian power. This is what's going to happen. Jesus says, they will deliver you to tribulation and will kill you, and you will be hated by all nations because of my name. Who wants to join a church so you can be hated by all nations because of my name? I do, because I want to be associated with Jesus Christ. That's where I want to be. I don't care what the world thinks. The world's going to all be, the earthly, the carnal world is going to be lost forever. They have nothing over what Jesus offers, which is eternal life. Jesus says this is going to happen, but he will be with us. I have given you light, the light which has been presented to me. This is talking about the Sunday law and when it comes in. I want you to notice carefully. If followed, it will change the course of many and will make them wise, cautious teachers. Refraining from work on Sunday is not receiving the mark of the beast, and where this will advance the interests of the work, it should be done. We should not go out of our way to work on Sunday. In other words, they bring in the Sunday law, which says you cannot work on Sunday because it's a day of worship. She says some Adventists are going to say, you know what? God said 6 days shall you labor and all your work. I'm going to go out there and work in my field, and I'm going to make it obvious to all my neighbors and everybody around me that I am working because I'm honoring God. What she's saying is, no, that's not honoring God. We are to try to build as many bridges with our community as we can. Because how are you going to win them for Jesus if you have an arrogant attitude like that? Our whole goal is to win as many as we can during this whole time. After the Sabbath has been sacredly observed, in places where the opposition is so strong as to arouse persecution if work is done on Sunday, let our brethren make that day an occasion to do genuine missionary work. Let them visit the sick and the poor, ministering to their wants, and they will find favorable opportunities to open the Scripture to individuals and to families. Even though Sunday's not sacred, you're not going to church on Sunday at this point. By the way, I have no problem if you want to go to a Sunday church right now. I think it's a good way to build bridges with our community. I've been to many Sunday churches in my life. There's nothing wrong with it. When a Sunday law comes in, though, as Seventh-day Adventists, we shouldn't then be going to Sunday churches. Because we really, at that point, are acknowledging before the world that, yes, man's day is okay. And I'm showing that I'm supporting that. See the difference? But we can still do some other good things. Thus, most profitable work can be done for the master. When those who hear and see the light on the Sabbath take their stand upon the truth to keep God's holy day, difficulties will arise, for efforts will be brought to bear against them to compel men and women to transgress the law of God. Here they must stand firm, that they will not violate the law of God. And if the opposition and persecution are determinedly kept up, let them heed the words of Christ. When they persecute you in this city, flee to another. For verily I say to you, you will not have gone over the cities of Israel till the Son of Man come. This signal for fleeing, when are we supposed to flee to the hills? When are we supposed to flee? Many Adventists are really confused on this point. And I want you to understand something about fleeing. What is the purpose of fleeing? When the Sunday law comes, let's say they just announced the Sunday law. They've just announced it, or they're going to announce it this week. They announce, here's a Sunday law across Australia. Everyone's going to have to do this. What happens if everybody that keeps the Sabbath says, oh, it's a Sunday law. I'm out of here. And all the Seventh-day Adventists and all the Sabbath keepers just disappear. They just vanish. They're out. They've gone bush. What does it say about our God? Think about it. If we serve the living God, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, the general of the armies of the host of heaven, and as soon as the law comes out from man, we run like we're scared? What does it say about our God? Think about that. We are not called to run for self-preservation. We are called to be witnesses. We are called to try to share and try to win as many people as we can. God will let you know when that time is to come. There is a specific signal. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But don't you think in past history, when the flood came, did God give a specific time when Noah and his family were to come onto the ark? Was it obvious what time they were to come onto the ark? It was obvious. Why was it obvious? All of the animals had come on the ark, right? Angels all brought them. And Noah made a final appeal. They knew it was time. In Sodom and Gomorrah, did Lot and his wife know when it was time to leave Sodom and Gomorrah? Did Abraham know ahead of time Sodom and Gomorrah were going to be destroyed? Angels came to get them. God made specific time to come and get his people. The signal for fleeing. It is no time now for God's people to be fixing their affections or laying up their treasure in the world. The time is not far distant when, like the early disciples, we will be forced to seek a refuge in desolate and solitary places. As the siege of Jerusalem by the Roman armies was the signal for flight to the Judean Christians, so the assumption of power on the part of our nation, this is a U.S. nation, by the way, and the decree enforcing the papal Sabbath will be a warning to us. It will then be time to leave the large cities, preparatory to leaving the smaller ones for retired homes in secluded places among the mountains. And now, instead of seeking expensive dwellings here, we should be preparing to move to a better country, even a heavenly. Instead of spending our means in self-gratification, we should be studying to economize. I want you to notice the pattern here. There's a time is coming when we're supposed to leave the large cities, and then you're going to leave the smaller cities to more secluded places. It's kind of like a staged fleeing. But why is there a staged fleeing? A couple of reasons. And it's not for this one. Some of you may have saw this news article. Yesterday this came out. This father and his son, and I have their names here. I'll probably slaughter the pronunciation of them. But this is an 8-year-old man. There on your left and on your right is his son. They were found living in a forest in central Vietnam after they went missing during the country's war with America, Vietnam War. The older man could communicate a little in the core ethnic minority language, but his son only knew a few words. And Ho Van Tan, the man, was last seen running into the woods with his then infant son, Ho Van Lung, after a bomb exploded in his home, killing his wife and 2 other children in 1973, this newspaper reported. They carried him out. They found them living in a tree house, basically, and they carried the man out. They brought the son out. He did have a little bark thing over his anyway, my wife said make it a little more modest, so I put a big black dot there, just so no one's disturbed. Okay, but they pulled them out. They're worried they're gonna run back into the jungle. They're trying to keep an eye on him. Here they lived for 40 years, and they survived off of vegetable roots and killing animals and stuff. It's quite an amazing feat of human tenacity to survive, just the 2 of them. 40 years in the Vietnam jungle. True story. Isn't this amazing? Is this the kind of places we should be ready to flee to as Adventists? When the time comes, let's just go as bush as we can. No, that's not what God wants for us. This is not what God's... What is the purpose of the early or the little time of trouble? What's the real purpose of it? As Christians, what is our purpose during that time? To be witnesses. That's exactly right. During that time, we are called to do all we can to share Jesus as much as we can, irregardless at the expense to ourselves. It may cost us our life. It may cost us everything that we have. But you know what? If there's more people in the kingdom because of it, isn't it going to be worthwhile? And the reason there's going to be many, many martyrs, there are murders, but martyrs, is because God says, you know what? Each martyr is going to have a testimony, and there's going to be more people in the kingdom because of all those martyrs. So God calls us to do something, to be able to reach people for longer. And that's God calls his people to move to the country. Country living. There's lots and lots and lots about country living. I'm going to share with you a few of those quotes. Cities offer no real benefit. There is not one family in 100 who will be improved physically, mentally, or spiritually by residing in the city. Faith, hope, love, happiness can far better be gained in retired places where there are fields and hills and trees. Take your children away from the sights and sounds of the city, away from the rattle and din of streetcars and teams. I think that could be updated today, build something a little more modern. Away from, anyway. And their minds will become more healthy. It will be found easier to bring home to their hearts the truth of the Word of God. Out of the cities, out of the cities. This is the message the Lord has been giving me. The earthquakes will come, the floods will come, and we are not to establish ourselves in the wicked cities, where the enemy is served in every way, and where God is so often forgotten. The Lord desires that we shall have clear spiritual eyesight. We must be quick to discern the peril that would attend the establishment of institutions in these wicked cities. We must make wise plans to warn the cities and at the same time live where we can shield our children and ourselves from the contaminating and demoralizing influences so prevalent in these places. The cities are going to be filled with more and more corruption, and it's our job as Christians to try to reach out to them. So we don't leave the cities to abandon them, but we move out of the cities to, sometimes she uses the term outposts. You live outside the city, but where you can go into the city, as Enoch did in the Old Testament before the flood. He used to go into the cities of wicked men and plead for their salvation. Then he'd go to his mountain retreat home and live there for a few weeks and reestablish his walk with God, then back into the city, back and forth, back and forth. God is looking for men and women who will do that. It's particularly important for parents with children to have country living. And I know that some of you afterward are going to be tempted to come up to me and say, Marcus, is this suburb I'm living in, is it a city? I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to answer that question. It's something you need to ask God about. Is the suburb I'm in, is the city I'm in, is it a city? Is it like Sodom and Gomorrah? Do I need to move out? That's totally between you and God. It needs to be a thought-through, planned decision, not just a knee-jerk reaction to something that you hear here. But it's something you should be thinking about, because when when the disasters begin to come upon the world, where do you think the devil's going to attack the most first? The wicked cities. That's where he's going to have control at first. That's where he's going to cause great destruction. And so if we are right in the middle of that destruction, it's like Sodom and Gomorrah. When destruction came, Lot and his wife got out. Were they saved? Good question, isn't it? Lot's wife was physically rescued from the city, but her heart was still there, and she actually was lost. And many of Lot's own relatives would not leave. Very sad. But all those that stayed, what happened to them? They were destroyed. If we remain in cities, when God calls us out, God will be maybe unable to save us. As God opens the way, the time has come when, as God opens the way, families should move out of the cities. The children should be taken into the country. The parents should get as suitable a place as their means will allow. Though the dwelling may be small, yet there should be land in connection with it, that it may be cultivated. During this early time of trouble, when they first bring in laws banning you from buying and selling, Ellen White talks about those who have property with food on it are going to live like kings and queens in a time when everyone around them is suffering. When there's a worldwide food shortage, people go ballistic. Some people have told me that in Greece, where they're having major troubles, what's disappearing, what's being stolen most is food. They're going into people's yards and stealing all the veggies or the eggs or whatever food is in that they can get their hands on. That's what they want. All the gold in the world is worthless if you're starving to death, right? So when there's a bunch of hungry mobs, who wants to be in the middle of a city with a bunch of hungry mobs? It's not going to be a pretty place to be. But if you have a bit of land, if you have some of your own food, it's going to be a huge blessing. But again, your purpose of being out of town is not for self-preservation. If your goal is self-preservation, you're going to be sorely disappointed. Your purpose has to be, I will have this place so that I can be a witness for longer, so that I am not hampered in my opportunities to share Jesus with others. Again and again, the Lord has instructed that our people are to take their families away from the cities into the country where they can raise their own provisions. For in the future, the problem of buying and selling will be a very serious one. We should now begin to heed the instruction given us over and over again. Notice this, again and again. She writes, it's like the angel told her this repeatedly. This was not just a one-time message. God says her again and again and again, hoping that we'll get the idea. This is 100 years ago. How much more important is it for us now to listen to this? We should now begin to heed the instruction. Get out of the cities into rural districts where the houses are not crowded closely together and where you'll be free from the interference of enemies. For 2 years past, the Lord has shown me in vision repeatedly that it's contrary to the Bible to make any provision for our temporal wants in the time of trouble. I saw that if the saints have food laid up for them, by them, or in the fields, in the time of trouble, when sword, famine, and pestilence are in the land, it will be taken from them by violent hands, and strangers would reap their fields. Then will be the time for us to trust wholly in God, and He will sustain us. I saw that our bread and water would be sure, and at that time, we should not lack or suffer hunger. In this passage, she goes on to say that some people are going to, take all this tinned food or bottled food and all these, things, and they're going to go storm some secret place. And then when the time of trouble comes, they're going to run there thinking they have all this great food. And when they open it up, guess what? It's full of worms and mold, and it's all gone off. Okay? So a time of trouble is coming. God tells us, but He's not telling us so that we think, oh, how can I save my own skin? What can I do to make sure I still have food to eat and my kids still have food to eat? God says, no. As my people, you have an important role to share this three angels message with the people around you because the world don't know it. They're not just going to hear it. In fact, the religious leaders of the world are going to be telling them absolute lies. The multitudes are going to be hearing rubbish from the governments and from the religious leaders. Who's going to stand up and preach the truth? Who's going to share the honest truth of what God is saying in His Word? God has raised up the Seventh-day Adventist Church as a remnant church with a specific message at a specific time so that we can share it. God will help you to do that. God trusts us with that. We've looked at Revelation 12 and we looked at Revelation 3, 12, 13, and 14. I'm not going to go through all of this with you, but I want you to open Revelation 15. I want to go through a little bit of Revelation with you today. In Revelation 15, you'll notice in verse 1, I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous, 7 angels who had 7 plagues, which are the last, because in them the wrath of God is finished. And here, these 7 angels get ready to pour out their 7 bowls of wrath, which they do in chapter 16. In chapter 17, 18, we have the doom of Babylon, the fall of Babylon and the confusion of this world. That's what it talks about. But during this time where the angels are preparing, this is right before probation closes. And God is wanting his people to be sealed. It's on your sheet here. Everyone's going to be sealed before the close of probation. They will either have the mark of the beast in their forehead or the hand, or they have the seal of God in their forehead. Every one of us will be on one side or the other. There won't be any fence sitters at that time. God wants us all to be ready. And you can see the 5 wise virgins on top, the 5 foolish virgins on the bottom of your chart there. Notice it's the 7 last plagues. Why are they called the 7 last plagues? How many plagues were there in Egypt? Who knows their Bible history? How many plagues in Egypt? 10. Very good. The first 3 plagues were universal. They went to the land of Goshen and the land of Egypt. There were frogs everywhere. The water turned to blood everywhere, okay? But in the Revelation, we have, it's called the 7 last plagues. The last 7 plagues in Egypt affected only the Egyptians. And that's why a lot of Egyptians actually figured it out. That's why they all went over down to Goshen, and they all joined the Israelites, and a great mixed multitude left Egypt. They said, we're not going to take part of that. We want to be with God's people. The same thing is going to happen in the last days prior to the plagues falling, because when the 7 last plagues fall, it's after probation closes. So before that time, though, people are going to be making up their mind, and there's going to be lots of people from the Catholic Church, from the Baptist Church, from the Hindu faith, from all kinds of faiths, and they're going to be joining God's remnant people. And there's going to be lots of people within our church that are going to be leaving because they're afraid of the persecution that's coming. There's going to be a huge melting pot. It's going to be a huge mixing, but God is calling us to be a part of that. After probation closes, that is a very, very significant event of which, when probation closes, how many on planet Earth are going to know? None of us. We aren't going to know. When the first plague falls, we may recognize that, and then we'll know. Okay? But when there's not going to be anything that we're going to necessarily know for sure. In fact, God's people are going to have a time of Jacob's trouble where they wrestle with themselves, where they're thinking, I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if I'm worthy. They're thinking, I could have done more. I had finances, I could have done more. I had talents, I could have done more. I had time, I could have done more. Why didn't I do more? My friend, my brother, my sister, my spouse, they're not following God now. Is there something more I could have done? I could have prayed for them more. I spent so much time watching the footy. I spent so much time on television. I spent so much time gossiping. I spent so much time just doing nothing. I spent so much time when I could have done more. And there's going to be a time of Jacob's trouble, which is going to be intense for God's people because they're not certain of their own salvation. They're wrestling with God over it. But after probation closes, there's going to be no more righteous deaths. It's as if God says, you know what? There's martyrs before probation because those martyrs, there's going to be more people in the kingdom because of it. But once there's no value, there's no benefit for someone who is on God's side to die. God says, guess what, Satan? You can't touch my people anymore. They cannot die. Woohoo! And I study with kids and they tell me, you mean I can run and jump off a cliff? Whee! And I won't die? And I can parachute without a parachute and I won't die? You can tell the age of kids I study with. Obviously, we won't be doing that. We won't necessarily know that. But the truth is, at that point, all those that God has determined that are holy, let them be holy still, they will never die. And even those that have died prior, guess what? They're going to be resurrected and never die as well. Doesn't really matter as long as we're faithful to God. The 7 last plagues are going to fall. And if you read through Revelation 16, it's a horrible description of these plagues. I've preached on that quite a few years back now. But when those plagues fall, the people aren't going to repent. Even the Christians that thought they were Christians that are receiving the plagues, they're actually going to curse God as a result of that, which is very sad. I want you to open your Bibles, go back to Psalm 91. Psalm 91 is a psalm that when I was young, we read around the breakfast table enough times that I memorized it. I think I still have it memorized, but I'm still going to open it. Psalm 91. I really believe that this entire psalm is a psalm of hope for God's people. I would strongly encourage you to put it into your memory bank. So this is in your heart and in your mind. This is God's promises to us, and I believe it's specifically for after the close of probation. Psalm 91, he who dwells in the secret place of the Most High. What's the secret place of the Most High? It's living in Jesus. It's abiding in Jesus. It's a place the world doesn't understand. It's not a physical place. It's a spiritual place. It's where you live. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High will abide under the shadow of the Almighty. Notice the imagery. It's like the children of Israel going through the desert. Here's this shadow of the Almighty. They're in God's presence. God's in them. God's outside of them. They are completely protected by God. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress, my God. In him I will trust. When other people in the world are putting their trust in governments to save them, they're putting trust in the armies of the world. They're putting trust in the religious leaders. They're putting trust in a whole bunch of false places to put trust. God's people put trust in him. For it is he who delivers you from the snare of the fowler and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will take refuge. His truth will be a shield and buckler. You will not be afraid of the terror by night, nor of the arrow that flies by day, nor of the pestilence that walks in darkness, nor of the destruction that lays waste at noonday. Notice what will happen. 1,000 will fall at your side, and 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. It won't come near you. Only with your eyes will you look and see the reward of the wicked. Because you have made the Lord my refuge, even the Most High, your habitation, no evil will befall you, nor will any plague come near your dwelling. For he will give his angels charge over you, concerning you, to bear you up in all your ways. To guard you in all your ways. They will bear you up in their hands, lest you dash your foot against a stone. You will tread upon the lion and the cobra, the young lion and the serpent you will trample down. It won't hurt you. Brown snakes won't kill you. Nothing will get you. Because he has loved me, therefore I will deliver him. I will set him securely on high because he has known my name. He will call upon me and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will rescue him and honor him. With long life I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. That salvation is coming. I'll give you a brief description. I would really encourage you to read. I've already told you to read the last chapters of Great Controversy. If you don't have a copy of Great Controversy, the church will give you a copy. Just come and ask. We're happy to give you a copy. But Great Controversy, these pages tell a picture, and I just want to briefly describe this scene to you. God's people are going to be scattered. There will be little bands of them in prison. There will be little bands of them in the mountains, hiding places. Maybe some will be solitary, but there are going to be little bands of God's people around planet Earth. There's only 144,000 people left. That may be a literal number. It may be it is definitely a symbolic number. It could be literal as well, with the number of persecutions and martyrdom that's taken place in the great time of trouble. The early time of trouble. So here are these people. They're God's people. A decree has been determined by all the nations of the earth that God is still angry. As the plagues are falling, as it gets worse and worse, the nations are going to decide, you know what? The only way that God's going to back off from his anger is that we actually have to exterminate all of these Sabbath keepers that we have in jails. And so the armies are going to be amassed to try to find any ones that are in nooks and crannies of planet Earth. And all those that are in jail, a death decree, a universal death decree around the world is going to be set that on this day, every nation is going to execute and exterminate every Sabbath keeper on planet Earth. This is what's going to happen. They're going to come after all of us. Who thinks they can outrun the satellite systems, the heat systems? You know, our safety cannot be in our cleverness. Our safety is only in Jesus Christ. Make that very clear. It's only going to be in Jesus. But here, these people are, and they're going to be praying. They're going to be praying to God. They're going to be praying for deliverance. And just as we see in the fairy tales where a knight in shining armor comes, just on a white horse, just at the last minute, we are going to have Jesus on a white horse in Revelation 19. He's going to come at the last moment. And he's going to come, and as the armies come to get God's people, this darkness falls across them. A darkness on the surface of the earth which is darker than night. And they're going to be paused. And then there's going to be this beautiful rainbow that's seen. And the wicked are going to recognize, whoa, this battle's not against these people. We've been fighting actually against the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. They're going to be stopped in their tracks as they see this. There's going to be great things in the earth. The islands are going to disappear. The earth itself is going to actually be like you're surfing. You're out in the middle of the big waves. The land of the earth is going to be rolling like this. And there's going to be a little rainbow above the head of each believer. And as they look up, they're going to see their Savior coming. And all of these righteous that think, oh, I'm not worthy, they're going to be falling down praying, and Jesus is going to welcome them into the kingdom, and they're going to know that they have made it, and they're going to sing a song of salvation. I have on the back of your sheet, this is after probation closed, you'll notice there's a list, 7 events between the deliverance and the second coming. And I've told you most of it's found in Great Controversy. There are some other quotes for it. The sun's going to appear. The moon's going to stand still. The streams are going to stop flowing. The dark clouds are going to come up. And in one clear space, the Orion is going to be seen. God's going to say, it is done. And when he says that, that's what the earthquake's going to happen. Mountains are going to shake. The prisons are going to be opened. Hailstones are going to destroy the large cities. The righteous are going to be freed. There's going to be a special resurrection then when all those that have really hurt Christ are going to be resurrected to see this. A brilliant star is going to appear, and the righteous are going to sing. The 10 Commandments are then going to appear in the sky, and everyone's going to see God's law is something important. All those people have been saying that God's law doesn't matter. You need to worship on Sunday. They're all going to see. It's going to be a huge rebuke to the religious leaders that have been teaching error. And all of those that have followed God, that have trusted God, are going to be vindicated. They're going to be, yes, this is why we followed God. This is what God's law says. God's going to actually announce the day and hour of when he's going to come, because he's kind of on his way back at that point. And then they're going to see the little cloud the size of a man's hand, God's people, and they're going to know that it's Jesus coming back. He's going to come, friends. He's going to come. And these final events are going to be rapid ones. We know that. It's going to be a great day. It's going to be a great day of rejoicing for God's people and a great day of sadness for those that have rejected him. God is calling for us now to be following the Lamb wherever he goes. If we want to follow the Lamb that was slain before the foundation of the world, if we want to follow him back to heaven when he goes back, we need to follow him now. When he says to me now, Marcus, I want you to spend time with me every day. When he says to me, Marcus, I want you to be kinder to your wife and your children. Marcus, I want you to give up your bad habits. Marcus, I want you to eat healthier. Marcus, I want you to, when he speaks to me, whatever he speaks to me, I make a decision every day. Yes, Jesus, or no, thank you. And you do the same. And if we make those decisions now, it's going to be so much easier. In fact, I would argue very strongly that if we are rejecting Jesus now, we will reject him then. But if you are accepting him now on a daily basis, it will not be that difficult, because when trials come now, if you're turning to Jesus, when bigger trials come, you will still turn to Jesus. But if you turn to the gods of this world, when you get frustrated, when you turn to novels, when you turn to movies, when you turn to lust, when you turn to gossip, when you turn to whatever the world offers, you will still turn to those things when it gets really tough. There's a copy of the 7 events. This is a half sheet. There's a couple piles of them in the foyer on the table. So if you want to take that, it goes with those 7 events. If you want to take that to have it, you're welcome to do that after the service. My prayer for each one of you, though, is that you're there. I'm so excited that Jed is getting baptized today. He's saying, you know what? I want to be counted with God's people. And I pray that all of us have that courage and understand that our purpose in the final days of Earth's history is to be the 3 angels God wants us to be heralding the messages, not worrying about ourselves. Whoever wishes to lose their life for my sake will find it. That's what Jesus says. And if we are doing that, Jesus will take care of everything else according to his plan.